Take it away, Rob.
Thank you, Liz. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another presentation of the Boise River Enhancement Network. We have a history of drawing a crowd. You're now part of that history. My name is Rob Tiedemann. I'm an ecologist with a 40-year interest in the Boise River. I'm pleased to serve as the chairperson of the Boise River Enhancement Network. BREN is a gathering of people interested in the health and happiness of the river for all to enjoy. We are volunteers, citizen scientists, and natural resource professionals, people like you. And we're especially pleased to welcome our guests this evening from Canyon County. We would love to have you join us as a member. And to do so, all you need to do is share your email address with you. You can do that by offering us that email address in the chat portion of this Zoom window, or you can visit our website. Simply Google Boise River Enhancement Network, and you'll be directed to locations that will tell you more about us and allow you to share your email address with us. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're funded by donations and grants. If you would like to donate to us, please know we would happily share our talents with your money and find a way to do more good on the river than we presently do. I'd like to make you aware of some upcoming programs. One includes Dan Steenson, an attorney in the Boise Valley, who will speak to farm communities and their role in improving water quality in the Boise River, and Clive Strong, who will speak to the public trust doctrine, which defines public ownership of Idaho rivers and how they're to be used and managed. Again, visit our website, Boise River Enhancement Network, to learn more about those events. If you have a question for me during this evening, please address it into the chat window, or you can reach me through the Boise River Enhancement email address. With that, I am pleased this evening to introduce our presenter, Timothy Richard. Timothy is a professional engineer registered in the state of Idaho and the director of the Canyon Highway District Number 4. Tim has served the public in his role as district engineer and director since 2004. If Tim is like other transportation engineers I've worked with in the past, he's deeply concerned about highway safety, as well as getting you from here to there, the obvious purpose of most roads. The project he will describe to us tonight accomplishes both of those requirements. And he recognizes that compliance with federal, state of Idaho, and local laws and ordinance protecting natural waterways like the Boise River come with the territory of his job. He also has an appreciation for the history and heritage of his profession, including bridge building, which is the artwork of a transportation engineer. Please join me at your home with silent applause for Timothy Richard. Welcome, Timothy.
Thank you, Rob.
Tim, I'm just gonna interrupt for a second, and I wanna draw attention that on June 26th, we will be in Caldwell and in Star, and we're gonna be doing a big trash pickup like we did last year, June 26th, 9:30 till noon. And it'll be a family-friendly event, and you should be getting an email with the registration information, and we hope that you'll join us for that. Okay, Tim, it's all yours.
Great. And just want to make sure, can everybody see that?
Yes, you are. Is that flashing light going to go away? You have like a strobe on you.
Hopefully it will. I've had this problem as well, so we'll see. If not, I can turn my video off and may just have to watch my slides.
That's okay too.
Very annoying, so. In fact, let me turn that off right now, if I can. There we go.
You are good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And I also noticed there in the, as the members were coming on, that Steve Waldinger is also joining us. Steve is principal with Forrester & Associates, Associates, who is the lead consultant on this project. So if I have any questions as we go through here, or Steve, if you see anything or have an answer that I can't respond to, I would appreciate your help. This is a multidisciplinary project. It includes a number of different disciplines in both the civil engineering, structural, hydraulics, transportation, as well as geotechnical, and then a host of individuals specializing in cultural, historical, and environmental issues. So, and let me just make sure. Okay. So what I'd like to do tonight is just present a little background on this project. I'm not sure how familiar everyone who's listening tonight is with this project. I'll talk a little bit about the funding for the project and where it comes from, what we've done on the project development to date, and I'll kind of give you some timelines. This project has gone on a little longer than we anticipated, and I'll explain why. And then I'm going to review our concept study alternatives analysis that was done now back about 4 years ago, and then update you on where we're moving forward today. So, and I thought I'd just start out with a couple of pictures. These were some pictures that the team was able to obtain, and this is one of the earliest pictures we know of the existing structure down there. As you can see, and if you're familiar with it, you'll know it has a very old coat of silver paint, and it appears in this photo that the bridge has not been painted. And you'll notice on the bluff up above also that there's just one house and a few trees. This in the background would be Canyon Hill. And I don't know if you can read it, but this little sign here says Old Oregon Trail on it. So very interesting little history here, and just a couple other photos. Apparently they later must have painted the bridge, because now this photo shows it with the silver coating. And there was actually a gas station down here on the curve called the Riverside Service back in the day. And again, we don't know when this photo specifically was taken. Someone with a little more knowledge of car history might be able to identify the era of those vehicles sitting down there, but anticipate this was probably back in the 40s. And just a couple other views kind of showing you the whole valley back at in that time. So with that, just a little bit about the project background. The existing bridge, it was constructed in 1922, so it's approaching the 100-year anniversary next year. It is what we consider structurally deficient, and that means that it is eligible for replacement. I'll talk a little bit more. We want to replace it with a new bridge to handle car traffic, but we want to maintain the existing bridge for pedestrian use as part of the Caldwell Greenbelt system and pathway system. And I would clarify, but despite the fact that the bridge is structurally deficient at this point in time, it is also only used as a one-lane bridge and still can handle the standard truck loading across the bridge. So if you're ever down there, you'll notice it does not have one of the weight limit postings on it, because it still is structurally capable of handling a full-size legal limit semi-truck. It is narrow. It's about 19 foot inside. It was originally, if you saw those earlier photos, it was used as a two-lane bridge, but currently it does not, can't really accommodate modern road width, especially with the striping we have on there currently, providing a bicycle and pedestrian access across the bridge to the greenbelt. A couple other issues we have with it is there's a narrow, smaller bridge on the east side, right on the inside of a curve. And we've actually had a semi-truck get hung up on that. That's a bit problematic. And then on the west end, the way that River Road comes into it is very poor geometry, and it creates problems and some confusion with drivers. So purpose of the project, this project is to provide a structurally sound bridge over the Boise River, improve safety and access for pedestrians and cyclists, and improve the roadway geometry to meet current standards. One of the other key things here, especially as the area continues to grow, as many of you may be familiar, a lot of the roads parallel to the freeway system, Overland Franklin, for example, Caldwell Boulevard, are very important in carrying local traffic and become quite busy. And that helps to alleviate all that traffic from having to go out and enter onto the freeway, because every time we have a merge, either on or off the freeway, we create congestion and slowdowns, as I'm sure you're all aware if you drive I-84, and also those are conflict points where more crashes occur. So by providing a good, reliable road system, local road system, it actually relieves the interstate from having to carry some of those traffic. So for in the future, it's an important aspect. Currently, I think our counts on this road, last time we did them, which has been a few years ago, the bridge was carrying about 1,300 cars a day, which for a one-lane bridge is a pretty significant number of vehicles. And the proposed project is to construct a new two-lane bridge at another location and retain the existing historic structure. It is on the National Historic Register. Our desire is to maintain that. It currently is being used as part of the Caldwell connection in the Caldwell pedestrian and bicycle path system, and we'd like to make it dedicated for that purpose. And after the vehicle traffic is removed, look at resurfacing that with something more friendly to bicycle and pedestrian traffic and providing as part of that system. This project, by the way, is a joint project of the city of Caldwell and Canyon Highway District Number 4. And we're both participating in it equally and financially. The city, we are the managing member of the team, but the city is fully involved in the project. So a little bit about funding. Liz had sent me some questions earlier that there was some interest in, and so I wanted to touch a little bit on project funding. I actually made the application. I was able to go back and couldn't actually remember when I made it. It turns out I made the application back in 2012, so it's been almost 9 years ago that we've applied for this project. It takes a couple of years after it's approved to actually get in the transportation plan. And so we were actually able to start really moving forward with the project in 2014, and I'll go through that a little bit more. The preliminary engineering, that is the design and environmental work and all the upfront items on this have been funded, and that totals about $2.4 million. The federal aid portion of that is about 2.2, and our local share, and these are rounded, obviously is about $200,000. Currently, looking forward, the remainder of the project, it's funded through two primary federal aid sources. One is called the Local Bridge Program, and that federal aid program helps to replace aged and deficient structures on the local bridge system, and that's administered through the local Highway Technical Systems Council. And that's really mainly paying for the bridge structure itself, and that program is contributing about $6.2 million. We also have what's now called the Surface Transportation Block Grant Urban. Used to be the Surface Transportation Program, and it's providing about $1.9 million. That's really for the approach roadways on each side of the structure. The local share of these future construction right-of-way costs is about $640 million, which will be split between the city and the highway district. Currently, we anticipate a shortfall, and that's not enough to kind of cover the construction of the bridge. And so we are working with the city of Caldwell and the Urban Renewal Agency. This project was included in the City of Caldwell's Urban Renewal Program. And through that program, we are looking at using basically, these would be property tax monies that would have been received by the highway district had the urban renewal district not been formed. The city, the urban renewal district, has been holding that money and will apply that to the construction, which should help us finance the balance of the project. Okay, so a little background on this. Like I said, we really got underway back in 2014 with our agreement with the state for the project. We've been went through a process of selecting a consultant, Forsgren and Associates, and their subconsultants, Bionomics and American Geotechnics, and negotiating a contract with them to do what we consider the concept phase. So the way we approached this project is because it was fairly complicated. We broke it into two parts. One was alternatives analysis concept phase to figure out where's the best place to put it, exactly generally what it's going to look like, those kinds of things. Once we knew that, then we can better scope the final design, the structural design portions and elements of the roadway design that take a little more detail. So we started that back in 2015. We had a public open house in July of 2016 and presented our 4 primary alternatives, actually 5, because there is always we consider a do nothing alternative, and received some feedback, and then had the concept report, which basically kind of outlines where we're headed with the project and the basis for that back in September of 2017. And then commenced the final design phase shortly thereafter. As part of that, in 2018, we were conducting tribal coordination with the local tribes, including the Shoshone-Bannock, and they became interested and wanted to assure that some of their cultural resources were protected. And they spent some time evaluating that internally and requested we do an ethnographic study. And so we went through the process of finding along with the tribe, an ethnographer to conduct that study. And then they commenced that study back in September 2019. And that was approved by the tribe in July of 2020. And so during that time, the remainder of the work on the project kind of was on hold until we could work through this process and make sure that the proposed project did not impact or have an impact on tribal cultural resources or tribal cultural resources. And it turned out it did not, but it was a good process to go through. And so really, we have, as we call it, we have just basically restarted this project as of a couple of months ago. So this was really great timing for you to ask me to review this, kind of refresh my memory on some of the things we had done, so, and where we were at with it. Just briefly, the concept phase, there's a number of different components of it. Really, it was looking at the whole picture: irrigation, flood, environmental issues, geology of the general area, and looking at where we could reasonably put crossings and evaluating those. So these were all components of that first phase, and we conducted what we call an environmental scan, where we looked at all these to see if there were issues out there that we needed specifically do. We also did our public involvement and some stakeholder interviews. I believe representatives from BREN were interviewed at that time. We had some newsletters going out, and then we held the public meeting that I referred to earlier. At this point, I'd like to maybe just kind of, not sure how familiar everyone is, but maybe hit some of the highlights here of what is out in this area. Hopefully you can all see this. I know it's probably a little bit small on the screen, but this is the existing bridge right here, Plymouth Street Bridge. North is up on this map. This is the Boise River coming down here. This is the Riverside diversion from the river into the Riverside Canal and their rock dam, if you will. And then it makes the hard corner, and here we have the bluffs on each side in this area coming down. And then just above the existing bridge is the Farmers Co-op diversion dam, diverting water into the Seabury Ditch, which is operated by the Farmers Co-op, as well as the Canyon Ditch right here. This also points out the existing Caldwell pathway system comes up along the old Boise interurban route, crosses the existing bridge, and then comes down around and continues back along Town Circle, which is a local public road that the district maintains, and then connects back into the remainder of their system. The other thing I did want to point out is there's another canal here that's not quite as obvious. It's the Notice Canal. It actually goes into a pipeline from the Caldwell, the southeast side on the Caldwell and Canyon Hill, and it drops underneath the river and comes up right over here on top of the hill on the northwest side. That structure was built in 1920, and it was a cast in place concrete. And I have a historical article on that. It's very interesting, made a national engineering publication. And they were actually that summer, if I recall, able to divert the river in order to cast it in place and then divert it to the other side and continue to. And they're kind of, check here for a minute. Is there any problem with the presentation, Liz, or is everything?
Yeah, there was a little feedback there for a second, but it's not here anymore. We can still see your slide and hear you. So I know it's kind of weird being just on your own. Go ahead, Tim. You're doing great. This is super interesting.
That's fine. I just heard that. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any issue before I continued on. I hate to present this and not have you all here. So great. So there's a little bit of the background. I think those are the key features I wanted to point out. When we originally did this, we actually had, I don't even remember, Steve might, 20 or more alternatives of various configurations, basically extending from the Interstate I-84 crossing of the Boise River to about where alternative 1 being the most northern point. We looked at those initial alternatives and kind of boiled those down to 4 primary alternatives, and those are presented here. And these are what were presented in the public meeting back in 2016. And as I had talking with Rob before and Liz before the meeting, when I originally put the application together, just from a quick glance at it, my initial thought was the logical place would be to run it here somewhere near alternative 2. But as we started through this process, and of course that was the engineer looking at straightest line and best geometrics, and started looking at all the other issues, cultural, environmental, the floodplain, we started to realize that there were some other alternatives that were very viable alternatives. And basically boiled those down to these as the most realistic and represented the primary alternatives that were out there. So we ended up with we call the alternative 1 the northernmost. Alternative 2, this is the existing bridge right here. So it lies just south of the existing bridge. And then alternative 3 and 4, which were a little bit further downstream. I will point out on this slide, these 2 lines here, I'm not sure their color, I'm colorblind, so, but are the floodway limits, and the outer lines that are out here are the floodplain limits. And you can see the floodway and floodplain are very coincident in this area. But the floodplain definitely widens out substantially after you depart the narrow part of the canyon, which is right where the existing bridge is at. Let me just walk through these alternatives really quickly with everyone. And I do appreciate Steve Waldinger had put this together for a presentation some time ago and shared this. So a lot of these, especially these graphics here, were something that he had done the work on, so I appreciate that. These are very helpful. So the nice thing about alternative 1 right off was, which was not something I originally considered, it basically is an extension of Highway 2026. This is 2026 coming right over the top, right over the top of I-84 here. So this would take the road just directly out and over this undeveloped knoll to the east of the Old Highway 30. So Old Highway 30 existing is crossing right here. And this photo shows up on the bluff along this alignment, the bridge would be taking off here, be quite a ways high, quite a ways above the river, I believe about 40 feet of clearance, and come down and land over on this far side. One of the questions in this alternative, and I will tell you this was the recommended alternative, so I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through. There are a couple of things here that might be of interest to this group. The bridge will require some pilings, pilings in the river, columns, abutments. So the first the abutment actually will be up here on top of the bluff. The first pier actually is intended to land on the head of this bar, which under normal, most flow conditions, this is outside of the river flow. And then the next pier would actually fall on the far bank, so it would actually be outside of the water under normal flow conditions again. So up to this area doesn't flood until we get up to about 7,000, 7,500 CFS. The far abutment would actually land back over here by the existing canal road, quite a ways back over. And this is actually looking then from what would be this is actually on the bank looking back across the river. So the top upper abutment would be here on this default cap and coming across. And the other abutment would fall here. This is the Riverside Canal, and this would be piped through the project. And then a fill built over this, and the road would then turn and come in and tie in right down here with the existing roadway at this point. And there's our tie-in point. It's very close. We'll probably have to taper the road a little ways here to match in, but generally it will be near the point where this existing curve kicks off. Alternative 2 lies just south of the existing bridge, and it would come down as we come around the sweeping curve here. It would have taken off and headed across here right in this area. This would require crossing the Farmers Co-op, the Canyon Hill Ditch, and also crossing right over this over 100-year-old what we call an inverted siphon. It's the Notice Canal, which we don't know the condition of, and there was some structural concerns about that. The other problem with this alignment is to get it back in order not to cut through a lot of this forested wetlands and have a longer crossing of the floodplain. We need to come in here a little bit closer to the existing bridge, which puts a fairly tight curve in the bridge and really geometrically isn't desirable. And it would also cross over, and we then may have to make accommodation for the Caldwell pipe pathway system on both sides of the river for this alternative. And then we would be tying back into the existing Plymouth Street. Alternative 3 and 4 are similar. This 3 was the initial alternative that provided the shortest span with respect to, because of floodway limitations. But as you can see, it goes right through this RV park, which has some longer term residents in it. They're not permanent, I guess, but fairly long term, and that is a concern for social justice issues when we evaluated those. So just some pictures. This alignment would basically cut through the middle of this, and it would also divide this piece of property basically in two, which is also not really desirable. And it has the same issues with crossing the Caldwell pathway on two sides and having to make provisions for that before touching down. And it also has some forested wetlands, not as much, I don't believe, as alternative 2, but it did have some wetlands impacts there. And then alternative 3 was developed to a little bit longer span, but tried to avoid as much impact on the the RV park property. So when we shifted it to the south, this created a much longer, more costly span. And in the end, it still had a significant impact on this property. Although not quite as much as number of the alternative 3, it was still fairly significant. Also had some issues or impact here on forested wetlands as well. So here's a view looking, still looking ahead on that alignment. And I believe this alignment, not as much, but alignment 3, the previous one also had the issue because that siphon that we, for the Notice Canal, was underneath that alignment. And then it would tie back in. So basically the roadway section or bridge section here, we're looking at a two 12-foot travel lanes with a 4-foot bike lane on each side, as well as the shy distance for the bridges. The Notice Bridge, which would be crossing over the Notice Canal, would be a little bit wider, provision for possible future sidewalk if necessary. And on the roadway section, we'd be just tying into what was already on Plymouth. I think it's a little bit wider. I don't believe Plymouth currently has bike lanes on it, but we wanted to provide for that in the future. This is a very simplified table. I can tell you that there's a lot that went into looking at this, and there's a lot of detail on these. But basically, these were the 4 alternatives here, 1 through 4, and they're ranking in a number of different areas. 1 being the least impact or most desirable, and 4 being the lowest. And this was really put together as just a really quick summary without getting into all the details. But alternative 1, although not the lowest cost alternative, it was the one that was recommended for moving forward, mainly because the environmental justice impacts, wetland impacts, and relocations were the lowest. This does have a little more land impact. It was rated lowest there, but I guess the caveat to that is the land in this case is undeveloped land owned by most of the right-of-way that would be required for this. This would be from the Farmers Cooperative Ditch Company. It's undeveloped dry land on top of the hill. There is some right-of-way on the, if I can go back here real quick, that would be required on the east side of the river. This land down here on the bottom is now owned by the city of Caldwell, and will be a Caldwell, addition to the Caldwell Park system, as well as their, I believe, their Greenbelt system. The bridge here is planned to be 16 feet of clearance, so the pathway would be able to go underneath the bridge down in this area. But there's no development in here, and there is a little additional right-of-way that would be required at this location. So even though the land impacts on alternative 1 show as a 4, they're really not as impactful as some of the others. So for those reasons and several others, and I'll just walk through those. The recommended alternative, which was number 1 to move forward with, was for those reasons. Also to avoid the higher risk irrigation facilities, provided good separation completely with the bicycle and pedestrian pathway system, would continue to be able to function and use the existing bridge, part of that, without the road impacting it. At the least impact on one of the least, I think the least on forested wetlands. And it also had some of the least construction impacts in that it would probably require the closure of River Road underneath it during construction, but that is a traffic detour to the existing Old Highway 30. But other than that, the tie-ins on each end would be pretty straightforward. So we would have a pretty limited access. The existing bridge could remain in operation for most of the construction of this alternative as well. And it really avoided impacting developed lands, which is already mentioned. So where are we at now? So, as I said, we've kind of we've done all this work, kind of have our recommended alternative, and are now moving through, starting to look at the more detailed design. We have, and Steve might be able to join us and comment on this, but I believe the preliminary hydraulic findings are showing that just the one pier in the river has no significant rise or impact on it, on the water surface height. Being in the canyon, it's actually between those two diversion structures. So it's, the river is fairly confined and geomorphically probably doesn't have a lot of room to actually move bed load and change and be a alive and active river, unfortunately, because of those two confining irrigation diversions upstream and down. So we are just really getting into the preliminary design. That's scheduled to be done in December of this year, at which time we'll hold a public hearing on the project, being able to provide more detail that we're going to be working through on the bridge layouts and so forth. Our environmental approvals, we're looking at August of next year, at which point we'll then be able to begin with right-of-way acquisition, which we have scheduled just a little bit less than a year to do that, and we'll be able to finalize the design and be ready to go out to bid for construction around August of 2023. And with that, here's my contact information. Like I said, this is a multidisciplinary team, and if I don't know an answer to a question, please email me, or if you have comments, feel free to email them to me, and we'll get the answers out for everyone. I was going to share, if I can here before I finish, I was going to pull up, and Liz, can you see this display, this engineering drawing?
Yes, it looks great. I mean, it's hard to read it, but it's there.
Good. So I just want to share this as we've started through. We have done the situation layout, changed the name on the location drawing. I thought I'd share this because this provides a little bit, although it is an engineering drawing, sometimes these are hard to read. It does give you a little bit of better view of what we're looking at least on a preliminary basis for the bridge crossing using alternative 1. And so this is the bluff. This is River Road right here, for those of you familiar with it. And you know, the river lies right down in here. It's normally confined between here and about right here on this side. And so the bridge would be quite a ways above the river, probably in the range of 30 or more feet where the normal flow is. This is the rock bluff on the west side. We'd have a continual down gradient, and we'd still maintain about 16 foot of clearance. And here you see the future, and this would be a Caldwell Pathway Committee Caldwell project, but would be, this we would provide for this mixed use path. We'd easily be able to clear it underneath the end of the bridge. And this would be the far abutment right next to the existing Riverside Canal, basically on the access road for that. And we'd provide a new canal access down for them, and this section of the Riverside Canal would be piped through the project. So hopefully that gives everybody maybe a little bit more visual of it. So. And with that, I would hopefully that duration was just about right, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions anyone has on the project.
Thanks, Tim. That's super. So people put questions or comments in the chat, please. If you can't find the chat, move your mouse around and look for your control bar, and sometimes it's under the 3 dots, more chat, and make sure you're chatting to everyone, which is the default, and we'll see your question. I'm going to start, Tim. I'm sorry if you mentioned this, but are you anticipating an increase in the amount of traffic on this road, on the new bridge and the road.
Okay, I'm gonna turn on my video here, see if it's gonna flicker on me or not. We'll see. The answer is yes. I think that as any roads, all of our roads, we've been experiencing, I did analysis a couple of years ago, and we are experiencing about long-term average right now in our district, about 3.3% annual growth rate on our roads. Some areas have seen higher than that. So the answer to your question is, I think with growth, we're seeing growth on all of our roads. I would expect growth on this road as well. I don't remember the projections we were looking at on this for the 20 years, right off the top of my head.
Okay. So there's a question, will the highway district send out notices for the public hearing? And these are neighbors, I think, that are up on the highlands. Or how can people make sure they are notified, Tim?
Great question. If they provide their contact information, we'll add it to our database. I think when we did our first public meeting, we sent out, if I recall, I think it was around 4,500 notices. So we will cover this whole area and make sure that people get notices. But if they want to specifically be on the list, please email your contact information to me, and I will get it in our project records. We have a database of all the stakeholders and interested parties, so we can make sure they're notified. And yeah, so we'll go through a public notice process also with that, where we'll get some information out on media as well.
Good. Why don't you type your email address and into the chat, Tim?
Okay.
While I am sharing then a comment, if people didn't see this, and this is from a neighbor up in the Highland area, and they think that noise will increase. And so what have the studies shown on noise and wildlife disruption? And then it, of course, is going to hugely change the visuals. You might not notice it so much. Well, you will notice it, but if you're floating the river, it might look sort of the same if you don't look up, but if you are above it, you'll certainly notice the difference. And how are those concerns being addressed? And you can, if you're going to share more, fine. And if you're not going to share, then you can stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking here to see if I could do that. I'm not sure I found, for whatever reason, the controls are not coming up on my, here we go. Oh, I don't want to do that. Let me, before I do something, oh, here we go. Do you want me to stop sharing?
Okay. This is being recorded, everybody, and you will be able to watch it, share it with friends. It'll be on the BREN YouTube channel in a few days. Okay, so we're back to traffic noise, wildlife disruption, and the visual impact.
Good questions, and those are all things that were looked at. We did do some noise, and again, I can get specific answers to some of these questions. We did do an initial noise analysis with the alternatives, and that would be included through our environmental document review, looking at the various all four alternatives and what impacts they would have. So specifically, we are trying to cut the road down. The area of most concern with the noise was the neighborhood on the northeast side of the bridge crossing, because of the proximity of the road to those. One of the things we've been working on, and Steve is available, he could comment on this, is trying to keep that road as low as possible and berm up material in order to provide a noise buffer as well as a direct visual buffer. The bridge will be, any of the bridge options are going to be visible. We have had comments and concerns about headlights shining up and into houses, so we do have consideration for some of the headlight barriers along the rail of the bridge to prevent that. And what was the noise, visual?
Wildlife impacts to the wildlife that
right, yeah, and we did, as part of the environmental study, they did identify and look at I think raptor, bald eagle nesting sites. And we do know there is one on that has been documented up on top, actually, but I believe it's on one of the power poles up there. And that would be an issue during construction. It's outside of the roadway alignment. Underneath the bridge along the river, actually the bridge will be elevated, as I said, 16 or more feet. And so wildlife passage underneath that section of the bridge will actually be able to be maintained and won't be directly interfered with.
Thanks. And how about the traffic hazard in that alternative one with sharp turns? Are you, well, what is the speed limit going to be on it? Do you know yet? And it might.
The design speed for the project is 35 miles per hour. And so this one does not have as sharp a turn. I think if you, I don't have this up, but alternative 2, which is the one near the existing bridge, had a fairly sharp curve on it. This alternative flattens that out and allows a little bit a gentler curvature around that, but it is all designed for 35 miles per hour. So it won't be a high-speed roadway. We really don't want a high-speed roadway. We want to be able to move traffic, but do it efficiently.
And so then there was a question that is sort of tied in with that is, can the current bridge look something like the old one? Like, can it be classic and not just look like something out of downtown Seattle? And might that also be able to be used to kind of be slow speeds down and make sure people don't go flying off the bridge?
Well, I will be honest, I don't, we did look at alternative structures. The bridge engineers did that. And from a cost perspective, the proposed bridge structure is a steel girder bridge. It's not going to have a truss system or even a simulated truss system like that. But if there might be other architectural things we could do with the exterior of the bridge to improve that, and those are good comments that we need to get feedback on so we can incorporate those in the design.
Right, the people who live there definitely are the experts in this this environment. Sylvia asks, was it considered to have the bridge off Madison Street? And I, of course, don't know what that would mean.
I am not familiar with that either. So I am not sure exactly where Madison Street is at.
Sylvia, why don't you either come off mute and say, or type it up into the chat again.
Madison Street. It's you know where the curve is off the exit, and you go down the curve off the right. Instead of going to Wilder exit and making a left over the freeway, you make a right, and you just come down that curve, and that's Madison. And the river's right there.
Oh, okay.
Like further downstream?
Yeah, it's further down. I know what she's talking about now. I didn't know it was called Madison Street. It's just above the existing Boise River Bridge. I will have to look into that. We did look at some alternatives. I don't know if we went all the way down to the Boise River Bridge. Maybe Steve can recall that, but I can find out. We did look at some alternatives down that far. There were issues, if you recall, when I went back, when I was looking at that, similar to 3, there were some concerns about the flood plain gets extremely wide, or gets much wider down there. But I'll have to look into that. I can get back to the group and let them know. But I believe one of our original concepts was kind of down in that area, but that was about the limit of where we looked for all the crossing.
Thanks for that question, Sylvia. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, and so yeah, Renee, the local resident, you know, that there was a fox down there, and of course there's fox, deer, turkeys, and that alternative one will impact them. And I don't know, Renee, if you think different alternative, you know, is there an alternative that you think would have less impact? Because at this point, they're looking at those particular alternatives. I mean, they've looked at them. Do people have questions about how you know, how long it's going to take to build it, or anything on the construction process, or any other questions for that matter? Type them up in the chat there. It's certainly, I mean, 1922 until more than 100 years. So it'll make a big change in that canyon. Well, hey Tim, type your email into the chat. Did you find your did you find the control bar now, so you can find the chat and type your email in there? So Tim is, you know, he's right there. He's not some bureaucrat trying to make this happen from Washington, D.C. or even Boise or Seattle or something like that. So he's right there, and you're in Caldwell, in the community. So I just would like to remind you guys again that we do have 2 more programs on our calendar, and you'll find those both at our webpage, www.boiseriverinhancement.org. And that's one about agricultural contributions to clean water and the amazing work that farmers have been doing. And that will focus, of course, again on Canyon County. And that's coming up on April 21st. And then on May 5th, one on the public trust doctrine with former director of the Natural Resources Division at Idaho Attorney General's office, Clive Strong. And that'll be an evening one. The April 21st one will be at noon. And we'll be having a cleanup and trying to get all the trash picked up on June 26th, based out of Caldwell and out of Star that day. Any last questions? We've got Tim's email in the chat, and we have Steve's email, the lead engineer from Forest Green Engineers there, going to be the project manager. Rob, would you like to close us out for the evening?
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your time and talents with us. It's a pleasure to be with you. Please know that we are looking to keep Boise River a happy, healthy place for all. Again, we are a combination of volunteers, natural resource professionals, and citizen scientists. I was just up at the Nature Center in the Boise foothills this afternoon, talking to Martha and others who are working with us to grow black cottonwood trees that have genetic diversity and will take us through a period of climate change, we hope. Thanks so much for being with us. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Rob. And Mark, if you are just joining, we are just finishing. I'm sorry, but this program has been recorded, and you'll be able to find it on our YouTube channel in a few days. So, so sorry about that. And thanks everybody again for coming. We'll see you next time. You should be getting emails from us because we have your email now. Thanks a million. Bye-bye.